Today on Season 2, Episode 59 of the Unknown Packers podcast, Brice and I take a deep dive into the Packers' first game of the season against the bitter rival Chicago Bears. We talk the highs and lows of the game, pass out some game balls, and have a little fun along the way. And now it's time for Post-Game 1 Bears on Tap.
This is Green Bay.
Thank you so much for following the Unknown Packers podcast.
Touchdown! Dagger! Al Harris, 56 yards to a game-winning touchdown! Green Bay Packers!
Winning isn't everything, but it's the only thing.
Green and yellow, green and yellow, green and yellow, green and yellow.
Unknown Packers podcast.
Green and yellow, green and yellow, green and yellow, green and yellow.
And let me tell you this, Green Bay is a great town.
This is Green Bay, Green Bay, Green Bay.
And welcome to the Unknown Packers podcast, and I am your host, Brice Christensen. I should say co-host, because we're doing the post-game The Bears on Tap, myself, and the soothing, sexy sounds of our producer and communications director, Neebles. How are you doing, Neebles? Go Pack, go, baby!
I am doing well. How are you, Brice?
Oh, man, a win is a win. It feels great not to just talk in a microphone by myself in a dark room. I like to call the Unknown Packers podcast studio dungeon. And
The dungeon.
The dungeon. And so it's nice just to actually talk Packers, not just my thoughts, but get some banter going back and forth. Packers squeak out a win 10-3 in Chicago, the first win for your coach, Matt LaFleur of your Green Bay Packers. And so super exciting. A win's a win, but let's start off first and foremost with the day. So the 100th season, the 199th meeting, they had already played 198. My apologies for previous recordings. I kept on saying 198. I meant overall. And they played the 199th game last Thursday. So the whole day, we've been waiting for this day for a really, really long time. We're year-round the Unknown Packers production team. But it gets kind of dry sometimes through the dead zone. You're getting through training camp, preseason, and now it's finally here. So give me your take. What was your day like waking up, planning for the Green Bay Packers and the Chicago Bears to face off for the 100th season of the NFL, Thursday night football?
I don't know if I'm just abnormal or what, but I was looking through Twitter and everybody was talking, oh, I'm so excited, I can't sleep. It pretty much started out as a regular day for me. Got up in the morning, went through my whole routine. I was definitely, thinking about the game, excited about the game, but it was nothing that was going to distract me from what I had to get done during the day. My son plays football, so I had to take him to practice that evening, and he doesn't get out till 7:30, so I figured I was going to be missing a good chunk of the first quarter as it was. Luckily, I had a little bit of downtime. I was able to sneak out to the car and put it on the radio. And as soon as I heard that call from Wayne Larrivee announcing the kickoff, that's when the butterflies came. That's when I got really excited.
And we have that call on our intro. So we released 100th on Tap, 100 pregame. We had a variety of different titles for that episode, but really the 100th episode and really a streak of episodes going through from ever since we got on Anchor. We have a lot of other episodes through SoundCloud and through Podomatic, but since we've got on Anchor, we've gone through 100 episodes. And with this team, I think for me, going to the game and especially the unveiling of the new intro, and if you haven't checked that out yet, please do. 100 on Tap. You can check that out on a variety of different podcast platforms. But that is where it got me excited, just knowing how much change has happened with the Unknown Packers podcast team, now the Unknown Packers production team, having you on board and many others. And so for me, it was not only the third season of the Unknown Packers podcast covering the Green Bay Packers, it was a new season. So a lot of newness. Even though Coach Pettine is in his second year, a lot of newness on the defense. Coach LaFleur, this new offense. And for me, I just was going in with an open mind. I think I was more excited. About the fact that we're just kind of rocking and rolling and we're grooving. and releasing episodes on a daily basis. And now we've changed that format. We're going back to a little bit more of a saner approach and having 2 or 3 episodes a week. But I think for me, it was more of just kind of going in with an open mind. I wanted to be more in the moment and just kind of see what the Packers were going to do, what the Bears were going to do. I know I did some sort of prediction on the Chicago Audible, as well as our 100 on tap with you, myself, and Josh. And I gave some predictions, but going in the whole day, I was more geeked out about what we've been doing with the Unknown Packers podcast and the production team. Probably a shameless plug, but that was more my focus, getting really excited about, oh man, like what's going to happen now that the regular season is here and now we get to talk about actual games and not just predictions on who's going to make the team or what's going to happen in practice.
Super exciting.
Actual games. So, and then like you said, as we got closer, that's when butterflies started creeping in. But I have to tell you this, and you're aware of this, is I actually missed the first 5-6 minutes of the game.
What was the story with that?
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm assuming it was a glitch with my cable box, but I had talked to a couple other friends and their NBC was blacked out, or it was actually spotty. It was just choppy. But for me, every other channel worked but NBC. So I don't know what kind of karma I did to receive that, but that's my worst nightmare. And I always worry about that. Like, okay, is something going to happen where I'm not going to be able to watch the game? And sure enough, I'm getting texts from the whole team like, go Pack, go, what's happening? And I'm like, guys, are you blacked out too? Are you blacked out? My like lower lip is quivering, and my wife is telling me like everything's going to be okay. And I'm like, yeah, I know everything's going to be okay. It's not life and death. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, can you just let me process this right now? It's the first game and I can't watch it. So I had to restart everything. But for a while I was like, okay, maybe it'll pop up. Maybe it'll pop up. And then I just said, fuck it. And I recharged everything. So I recalibrated the cable box, recalibrated the internet, turned off the TV, and rebooted everything, which took another 10 minutes. So by the time I got everything going, but even when I was doing that, I still didn't know if I was going to get the game or not. So I'm just sitting there like, do I just book it right now to the nearest bar and just sit there with some strange folk and some peanuts and get this going? I don't know. So
it kind of reminds me of a story I have from a couple of years ago, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but typically we'll watch games with my dad, and I believe this was a couple of years ago for the NFC Championship game. I won't name the one, but we were all set. It was game time. We went to flick on the game, and nothing. We got nothing. So, of course, my dad's freaking out. I'm freaking out a little bit. My mom calls the cable company. You know, they're like, yeah, well, sorry, you know, we can come out on Monday. Well, that's not really going to work. We got a championship game here to watch. Couldn't figure it out. And then for some reason, something clicked. My dad went up into the attic. I guess he was taking Christmas decorations out or something. And what happened was there was a switch that got flicked in the attic. So he flicked that switch back on, and thankfully, boom, that did the trick. Saved the day.
Oh, it was the worst feeling. And luckily, nothing had happened. But finally, everything turned on. I was able to watch. But even still, missing that first 5-6 minutes, I didn't know what I missed. I didn't know. I was getting texts from all you guys, and it wasn't good. But
you didn't miss a whole lot of anything special.
But still feeling in the dark, literally, of just like, okay, I'm turning this on fresh. And it's about 9 minutes to go in the first quarter. So I would say it was an unusual day. Typically, I'm a little bit more jacked. But I think like you and I have been talking, and especially talking on the podcast, is the one thing that I'm really fortunate about, grateful for, and humble is the fact that I just feel more well-rounded. The more research, the more podcasting, the more other perspectives I get, it just makes me more grounded. And so I think that helped me going in, knowing that it was going to take a while for the offense to click. Didn't really know what was going to happen with these fresh faces that Brian Gutekunst fortified on the defense. And so for me, I just wanted to bask in it. And so the whole day I was just thinking to myself, all right, just be in the moment, get through the day. And I had a busy day leading up to it. And luckily, I was actually originally scheduled for work that night, and I was able to get out of it a week before, which was also scary. I didn't do my due diligence on that part and just kind of forgot that the Packers are playing on a Thursday, which shame on me. But like I said, I just went in open-minded, and then once everything started grooving, so now we're transitioning into the actual game. And give me your vibe real quick, just our interactions with the Unknown Packers production team. And we've got this group text going. So give me your take, because I had a hard time processing everything that was coming at me while watching the game as well.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And to put it bluntly, there was a whole lot of colorful language going on in this group text of ours. The guys were not thrilled with how everything opened up. And I quite frankly don't blame them. I try to stay on the more positive side, but sometimes the emotions get the best of you. There's just something about the Packers-Bears rivalry that kicks up that emotion a notch. I would have to say that it was pretty touch and go for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, texting and just everyone that's tuning in right now, keep in mind, I typically don't tweet a lot during the games. I like to just be in the moment, enjoy the football games. And then what I do is I'll probably, after the game, start tweeting a little bit more on, the press conferences. Also, I go back and watch the game. I watched the game twice, the condensed version and then the full version, trying to just hone in on some players that I felt like had great games, but in the overall grand scheme of watching a football game, sometimes you lose individual performances, and we'll highlight that in the second half of this episode. But colorful language, that's an interesting way of putting it. I think it's accurate and applicable. And for me, it was more of, I think it was a shock to the system for me. And maybe I think in years past, I definitely would have jumped on board and been like, woo, all right, rodeo, let's go. And I'd probably be throwing out some vulgarities as well. And I keep going back to the point of just, I have a game plan. I have a blueprint right now of how I'm viewing the Green Bay Packers, just like Coach LaFleur does and just like Mike Pettin does. Is my blueprint is, if week 5 or 6 occurs and we're still getting a 10-point performance and we're only having 2 drives that are significant, then I'm concerned of, okay, because to be quite honest, this was actually a preseason game for Aaron Rodgers in the offense. And I hate to say that. And I know that Chris Collinsworth kept on saying it like, oh, they should have played in the preseason. They should have played in the preseason. I think for me, I like the fact that we went in relatively healthy. And so again, like my blueprint right now is, as we go week by week, once it gets to the week 5, if things aren't clicking, then let's start having a conversation. Let's start swearing. Let's start getting pissed off. But with it being the first game, first quarter, and mind you, I was still getting caught up on everything else because I was in the dark literally for 6-7 minutes. But for me, I kind of had to almost put my foot down and be like, all right, like, can we just enjoy this game? We've been wanting this game for so long. Can we just enjoy it? And then it was crickets for a while. And I was like, uh-oh. What did I do? And then after a while, people were like, all right. And luckily, right after that was the big drive with Marquez Valdes-Scantling, the big 47-yard catch, and then the touchdown to Jimmy Graham. And then it was almost like we were trash talking each other in the group text, when in actuality, we should have been trash talking some of the Bears fans. But I thought it was a great rally moment for the team.
Sure.
Kind of going back and forth. Everyone has differing views of what the Packers are doing so far. And then to have that really great drive, Aaron Rodgers, essentially a no-look throw to MVS.
That was awesome.
Beautiful. Very Brett Favre-esque. Have you watched that? It's a clip with Brett Favre and Patrick Mahomes.
Oh, yeah. I saw that.
So that's what came to mind is, Rodgers and Favre are hanging out, in the summer. And so I'm thinking, is Favre teaching Aaron Rodgers because there are a couple plays in the game where, Rodgers is scrambling and he does like an underhand scoop to Jamal Williams. And I'm thinking, wait a minute.
Definitely some very Favre-esque things going on.
So I'm jacked up because that's one thing that I thought, wait a minute, Rodgers and Favre are boys now. They're buddies. Is Favre telling him like, hey, why don't you take some of the gunslinger with you? I know that you've had a couple broken collarbone injuries. Maybe you don't have that velocity. Definitely other pundits and beat writers and armchair quarterbacks are saying, oh, Rodgers doesn't have the arm strength. Okay, let's do some evolution a little bit and take a little page out of the old gunslinger and put her there in the old vice.
Put her in the old vice.
And so for me, seeing that video with Mahomes and then seeing that throw with Rodgers, I thought, all right, are we going to see a different Rodgers? Maybe a little bit more, I would say, not impulsive, but a little bit more reactive, a little bit more of a risk taker like the old gunslinger.
Right.
Do you think so? But at the same time, he held on to the ball a couple times. So give me your take on this. Is Rodgers becoming a little bit more like Favre?
That would be awesome. I mean, the one thing I got out of that video is I would take Favre as our backup in a heartbeat. He's old, but he's still got it. He was flinging that ball, which was awesome. But in all seriousness, it's hard to determine with Rodgers. I mean, you saw last night, there were times that it looked like he was willing to take a risk with the shuffle passes and the underhand passes, the no-look passes. But then again, you had those times where he just holds onto the ball way too long. Now, was that his receivers not being able to get open, or was he just being too cautious? Hopefully what we're seeing is just a comfort level thing. Taking little risks here and there. Hopefully he'll build upon it, and it would be really cool if he could add that type of thing to his repertoire.
Well, maybe like a hybrid.
Yeah.
So Rodgers, I guess how he is able to be very cerebral and doesn't want to take gambles sometimes. But then there's that hybrid approach where, sometimes like last year and years past, he just hold on to that ball. He didn't want to make that throw. And now maybe you're starting to see him loosen up a little bit with Coach LaFleur and with maybe Brett Favre and his guidance a little bit on especially that beautiful. And I didn't realize it was a no look until afterwards, going back and seeing that he was essentially doing a Mitchell Trubisky. He was staring down the left side of the field and then whoop.
I mean, that was a major no look. A major no look.
Yeah. As we wrap up the first half of our post game, the Bears on tap with myself and Neebles, we're co-hosting. Give me your vibe on the overall game. Packers win 10-3. We'll talk about game balls. We'll talk about concerns. We'll talk about the press conferences in the second half. But as we wrap up, give me your take. Give me your overall take right now on what you feel the Packers are like right now and moving forward.
Well, without revealing too much, I think I want to end this first half by just saying sloppy, sloppy, sloppy.
That's it?
That's it.
That's it? Just sloppy, sloppy, sloppy?
Sloppy, sloppy. We'll get into it more in the second half, but it was sloppy.
Whew. All right, I definitely agree with you. I think looking at the overall game, I mean, if you look at just the statistics alone, you win the turnover battle, you win the time of possession, definitely tilting the field by these long punts by J.K. Scott, which we'll talk about in the second half for sure. But I think going into it, going on the road, beating the Bears that are the reigning division champions, who went 12-4, knocking. They were double doink away maybe. And just to think, that's not an easy environment to go into as a first-time NFL head coach. And I thought Coach LaFleur definitely handled it well. There's definitely things that I want him to brush up on. And we'll talk about how he approaches some of those, I guess, inadequacies or inefficiencies that he saw. But overall, a win is a win. It's a huge win. Week 1, I hate when Packers play divisional rivals week 1. I think it should be more for the later season. But with it being said, with a win, I'll cross that off. We're in the driver's seat, I think. And now we'll look at going into having a home opener at Lambeau against the Vikings. We'll talk about that a little bit. But overall, I think a win is a win, especially against the Bears, regardless of how they played, regardless of how we played. I'll take that win any day. But we'll wrap up the first half of post-game, the Bears on tap. Just sloppy from you, Neebles. Anything else from your soothing, sexy voice?
I'll save it for the second half.
All right, go Pack, go. We'll be right back.
You are listening to the Unknown Packers podcast. If you like what you are hearing and would like to help us grow, take a minute to rate us on iTunes. The more ratings we get, the more visible we will be to Packer fans like you. Again, thank you so much for listening. This show wouldn't happen without your support. Now, let's get back to the second half.
Go, Pack, go! Go, Pack, go! Go, Pack, go!
Hey, Aaron, after the first practice of camp, you were talking about the defense, and you said that's going to be important for us, especially early as we're finding our rhythm on offense in a new system.
Foreshadowing?
I mean, did you see this coming, and what did you see from the defense tonight that made you look as prescient as?
Yeah, that was fun to watch. I mean, it's been a long time since I've seen a performance like that. Obviously, a lot of credit to Mike Pettin and his staff, but to those players, I mean, just incredible effort. We didn't do them a whole lot of favors with our own performance on offense, but I mean, every time we needed something, a stop, they came up with some really big plays. Great for Adrian, coming back to the team that drafted him to get a pick, in the end zone there. But a lot of credit to the front. I mean, I thought put a lot of pressure on them. It looked like, obviously, both the Smiths looked like they were in the mix a bunch, and that was just a dominating performance. Gives you a lot of confidence when you play like that on offense and win a game by a touchdown.
And welcome back to the second half of Post Game, the Bears on Tap. Your co-host today, Brice Christensen, as well as Neebles. And you just heard a little soundbite from Aaron Rodgers after his post-game press conference, talking about how great it is to have a defense. And so we're starting off the second half with game balls, post-game game balls. And Neebles, give me your first game ball. I'm pretty sure we're going to have a lot of overlapping game balls, in my opinion, but give me your take real quick. I think it's a perfect parallel with what Aaron Rodgers just said.
Definitely. I'm going to start with the defense. My game ball goes to one of the Smiths. Now, Za'Darius played very well. He was very disruptive, and he was anticipated, I think, to be the better of the two Smiths in this offseason. However, I am going to go with Preston Smith. Looking over his stat line, he had 6 pressures, 1.5 sacks, which is awesome. He had 4 hurries, 3 run stops, which were absolutely huge. He had 1 tackle for loss. He had 1 pass defended, which is crazy. Yeah. And he also had 3 QB hits. So he had a very, very solid performance last night. Preston Smith absolutely balled out last night, especially considering first game of the season, not a whole lot of action during preseason, new defense. Hats off to him.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned Preston Smith, too. Here's another thing. He's already matched Nick Perry's 2018 sack total of 1.5. Can you imagine that?
That's crazy. That is awesome.
As we were researching and getting ready for this post-game podcast, and I saw that, and I thought, oh, my God, are you serious? And so, yeah, you're right. I'm glad that you mentioned Preston Smith because he was sort of the unsung hero. Maybe Amos was as well, but Za'Darius Smith was getting all the love.
Exactly.
And especially after we drafted Gary and Savage, it seemed like everyone was talking about Za'Darius and the rookies. And you're right. Preston definitely balled out. Who would be your second game ball then?
Second game ball. I think I would go, if we're going to stick on defense here, I would go with, I'm going to give it to our boy Amos coming into Chicago. That's got to be a ton of pressure for him. Playing well, especially with all the offseason talk amongst Bears fans is, oh, we got rid of the 11th best player on the defense and, Ha-Ha is better, blah, 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 blah. He had a relatively quiet but solid game. 4 tackles. He had a pressure. He also had a run stop, which, again, that's huge. And then, of course, his game-sealing pick in the end zone. You couldn't have scripted it any better than that.
Oh, man. And if you go back and look at the tape, I mean, you got to think Amos went back to the future and was in practice with Trubisky. I mean, Trubisky was just eyeing that left corner of the end zone the entire way. And so was Rodgers.
Yep.
But Rodgers was doing a no-look. to the other side.
He threw it the opposite.
So, yeah, I mean, you couldn't have, especially with Amos telegraphing that was perfect. Against a team that drafted him, that essentially replaced him with HaHa Clinton Dix, and thought, we're fine. We actually got an upgrade with HaHa Clinton Dix. I thought he was the sleeper signing this offseason with Amos. I think him and Savage complement each other really well. And I do want to mention, you're probably thinking, is this Neebles just giving his game ball? And I'm actually giving my game ball, but I did it a little bit differently. And I wanted Neebles to give two. My first overall game ball, it's got to be the defense. It's really hard to pinpoint who. And I'm glad that you mentioned Preston Smith, and I'm glad that you mentioned Adrian Amos. For me, the overall defense, because I didn't know what we were going to see. It's a second-year head defensive coordinator with Mike Pettin. Mike Pettin being on the sidelines, which is such a change of pace from
love it,
from what Dom Capers used to do. And so I got this Kevin Green type of vibe where he's sitting there and he's getting the troops all fired up, ready to go.
For sure. Did you see that clip of after the game when he was absolutely mobbed by the defense? He's just smiling, and there's a lot of love on that sideline. I absolutely love that.
Well, and the funny thing and the great thing too, both mobs, one with Mike Pettin after the game, and then the one with LaFleur in the locker room. You know who was leading both of those?
Who's that?
Jair Alexander.
Oh, that's not a surprise.
So if you go back and look, Jair's the one that's actually grabbing them on the back of their neck and just like, all right, let's go. And so, Jair Alexander, just sticky play. Whatever receiver is playing opposite him, he's earning every single possible catch, every single yard. He is earning that. I just love how scrappy Jair is. But overall, I think the defense gets the game ball. It was just a refreshing experience for me because it's always been an offensive team for us.
Definitely.
And seeing this defense, and the thing that I want to also ground myself to is Matt Nagy struggled with play calling last year. He struggled again in Thursday night. Was that more indicative of the Bears offense going forward, or was this performance more indicative of the defense going forward? What do you think?
I think it's a combo of both. You know, a lot of people are saying that Fangio was responsible for the success of the Bears last season and that Nagy isn't quite ready for prime time. I don't know about that. I think it was a combo of both. This defense is definitely a few steps up from where it was last season. They trimmed the fat. They got some new guys in, and all the new guys impressed last night. Bears, say what you want about Trubisky. He may not be ready yet. I do think, however, ultimately they will be just fine. I think they will do just enough to ride this defense to the end, just like last year. However, you know, with Pagano now taking the helm, Fangio going out to Denver, Nagy could be in for a surprise.
I mean, I don't want to make this a Bears podcast episode. I mean, we are talking about the Bears too, but I did think a regression was going to occur again going into Chicago. That's not an easy task. I'll take it. 10-3. But overall, just looking at the stats, the Packers had 5 sacks, 11 quarterback hits against the Bears in week 1. According to NFL's Next Gen Stats, the Packers had a total of 19 pressures on Thursday night compared to a total of 9 in both games against Chicago last year. So that's an instant example of how much this pass rush has improved. So maybe I have to give a game ball to Goody, as LaFleur likes to call him too, because he saw the cupboard was bare, like you said, trim the fat, take out HaHa, you take out Clay, you take out Nick Perry, Mike Daniels as well, and then you put in Zadarius, Preston, Adrian Amos, Savage, Jair with that second-year jump. This is a scary defense. And so I wanted to see your take on what was it more indicative of. But if you just list off the playmakers and if they continue to play like they did, we have a scary, scary defense. So my first game ball is the defense. Going into my second game ball, because I gave you the first 2, right? Correct?
Yes, you did.
My second game ball, even though it wasn't a touchdown, even though he didn't go over 100 yards, I got to give the second game ball to Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Showed off his speed on that 47-yard catch that gave the Packers offense that spark that needed in the second quarter. It was a crucial play and the only touchdown drive of the evening for either team. And then we've been talking about it. Is he the wide receiver too? Is he the deep threat opposite of Davante Adams. And surprisingly, Geronimo Allison, who we've talked about as well, didn't have a single target in the game.
Yeah, he was invisible. And we talked about it on the previous episode that MVS is definitely stepping up. I had said that I felt that it was Geronimo's job to lose. And, if he keeps up with his lack of production, I can definitely see MVS coming in and taking that second receiver slot.
Catching 4 or 6 targets for 52 yards and then that 47-yard catch. So even though outside of that one catch, he had 3 catches for 66 yards, there was definitely, I think the thing that I want, I'll probably go back and look more just on MVS's performance alone, but I want to see, are they trying to use him like they did with Trevor Davis in the Winnipeg game? Like, are they trying to make him more of that explosive, triple threat? Because there were definitely some play calls that had him essentially get thrown the ball right at the line of scrimmage, and for him to use his speed to then possibly do some sort of game-breaking play. But I'm excited to see what his speed can bring to this team. I think he is the clear. I'm going to go right now and say he's the clear-cut wide receiver 2. I think it speaks volumes that Geronimo Allison didn't get a single target. Maybe he's rusty and maybe he needs some time. But the fact that MVS isn't rusty and he hasn't played at all in preseason, I think that speaks volumes. And against a Bears defense too, the road, you don't know if it's going to be a sophomore slump.
Right.
And so I was definitely encouraged by that. But he's my game ball 2, maybe a sleeper game ball 2. But wrapping up the game balls, who's your game ball 3?
Well, and before I go into that, you did mention that Allison had no targets. And I want to ask you, since you're a big fan, where was Whitewater Jesus?
I was kind of hoping we'd get through this episode without talking about... Oh, and speaking of, I've been... so I won a bet.
Oh, yeah.
I still haven't gotten paid.
Come on.
So little do people know, Neebles is not only the production... or not only the communications and productions director, he's also... He lays the pain down. So
that's right.
If I don't get paid, I'm sending Neebles out there, and there's going to be some bone breaking.
You know it.
But yeah, I'm still owed 25 large ones. I won't name his name. He knows who he is, and I'm sure he's a fan of the Unknown Packers podcast. I hope he's listening right now and Venmos me that hard-earned cash. But yeah, I was definitely thinking that maybe Jake Kummerow was going to be more of that surprise player in week 1, that maybe a lot of attention was going to go towards MVS and Davante Adams. But then again, I look back in the preseason, and for Jake Kummerow to get a lot of snaps and MVS and Allison not to, it makes me think that Jake Kummerow is not that bubble wide receiver that he was last year, but he's more considered depth. And maybe, again, it parallels with that whole week 5, week 6 blueprint that I've been echoing about. Maybe it's going to take Kummerow some time before he can be a weapon for this offense. But I think he provides a unique skill set. I thought that we would see something from him. But again, maybe it's a byproduct of the Bears defense.
Right.
And maybe it was LaFleur making adjustments after those first couple of series and realizing, all right, we need to do something differently.
Right. They just couldn't get things rolling. But I could definitely see him being worked in down the road. But they just weren't able to get anything going on Thursday.
Nothing like that. And I'd like to talk about, he was actually one of my concerns, is maybe I hyped him up a little bit too much in part of the Packers' success. But yeah, we'll touch on the concerns real quick. That's a great question. But what's...
let me finish up the game balls here, sir. I actually kind of threw Amos in there as a bonus game ball on the defense. But my offensive player of the game is going to have to go to Jimmy Graham. Graham is someone that I know a lot of folks thought he was a wasted offseason pickup, wasted cap space, beyond his prime, not worth anything. He didn't have a super spectacular performance last night. He had 3 catches for 30 yards and that huge touchdown. But what I think that means for the Packers is going forward, it's going to show that they are not going to be afraid to get their tight ends involved. I think that Jimmy Graham will be utilized in this offense this year. And, the tight end position as a whole will be used way more than it was in the past under McCarthy.
I like that. And man, that hurdle.
Oh, yeah. Over all world Eddie Jackson. I love it.
That was a little Manny Wilkins-esque.
Yeah, right?
I lost my crap
Yep.
when Graham hurdled. I lost my freaking mind. It's nice to see. And he's also playing with undisclosed. I mean, we know that it's a finger injury, but we
like
don't
a
know
thumb
this
injury or something.
We don't know the severity of it, if it's dislocated. He had a huge glove on, or at least the picture that was taken made it seem that it was a lot larger than his other hand.
Sure.
I liked seeing Mercedes Lewis in there.
Oh, yeah.
He
looks
weird.
Good, doesn't he?
Yeah, dude.
Oh,
he looks
man.
he looks trimmed up. And I remember Aaron Rodgers talking about Mercedes Lewis and how he took the offseason seriously. He looks ready to go. Robert Tonyan had a nice I can't remember what play that was, but he had a nice completion that extended the drive for the Packers. I think that resulted in a field goal, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you're right.
But yeah, Jimmy Graham and that throw by Rodgers, when he initially threw that ball, I thought, oh, but Jimmy Graham right there.
Oh, the 50-50 ball?
Yeah, right. High pointing it. And we ragged on Graham on can he haul down those 50-50 balls. So I'm glad that you touched on him and the overall tight end unit. I'm definitely pleased with what little we saw of Lewis and Tonyan. But the sad news with Jay Sternberger, our 3rd round draft pick out of Texas A&M, going on the IR. And I prognosticated that maybe Allen Lazard could be that wide receiver tight end hybrid. But it looks like the Packers are in good shape with Graham, with Tonyan, and Mercedes Lewis. And my game ball, you got to go with this guy. And I'm glad we both are bouncing back and forth. We're ebbing and flowing. You got your game balls. I got my game balls. And overall, it's providing a cohesive picture, I think, of what went really well for the Green Bay Packers. And what I thought, and something that I've been hammering about, is that J.K. Scott can be a weapon as a punter.
Oh, yeah.
And people are like, what? As a punter, he can be a weapon. And so the Packers selected former Alabama star in the 5th round in the 2018 NFL draft. And Scott finished his rookie year with a middle-of-the-pack punting average of 44.7 yards. However, at Soldier Field, J.K. Scott was elite. And as a punter, being deadly, are you kidding me? He pinned the Bears inside their own 15-yard line on 3 separate occasions and booted 2 63-yard bombs, including a clutch kick in the final 2 minutes that sailed from his own 16 to the Bears' 13, which was the game winner outside of Adrian Amos's game-winning interception as well.
Oh, yeah.
A total of 9 punts. He had 53, 42, 47, 63, which was, I think, aided by like a 15-yard football friendly bounce. 36 yards, which was pinned inside the 15, a 37-yarder, which was pinned inside the 10, a 50-yarder, a 37-yarder, which was pinned inside the 13, and then the final 9th punt of 63 yards. But look at this. His 3 30-yard punts, he pinned them.
Yeah.
It wasn't a touchback.
Yep.
And so, maybe the 15, maybe the 13, it's like, oh, that's 5, that's 7 yards. It still makes a big difference when this is a game of inches. And with it being 10-3, I thought, oh my God, no more Vogel, no more Shum. We've got, remember Craig Hentrick?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm just thinking of like, oh my God, like, and Shum and Nenga. And so I wanted a big special teams play. I was thinking maybe it would come from Trevor Davis, but J.K. Scott, Hunter Bradley, I think is someone that we don't talk enough about. Sure. Last year with the Brett Good and Zach Triner and who's going to be the long snapper, and we'll bring Brett Good back week 3, week 4.
Mm-hmm.
Now you've got 2 years of J.K. Scott,
Yep.
Hunter Bradley, and Mason Crosby. Cohesive unit, new special teams coach. Hunter Bradley, I think, was perfect on all of his long snaps. And again, that allowed J.K. Scott to just completely just wreck the football. I want to know,
Yep.
What is the state of his right leg right now? Is it just moaning still? Is it still just...
Dude, that he looks like he's probably like 12, 13 years old. I'm sure he's fine. I'm sure I can see him sitting down on the couch, watching some Saturday morning cartoons with the juice box this morning. I think his leg is good. But did you see that? Did you see the J.K. Scott game winner T-shirt that Pat McAfee put out?
Yeah, and I think that we should have gotten some copyright infringement. I mean, I echoed that after the game, I thought, but I didn't put it out there on the interwebs. But yeah, Pat McAfee, I mean, I think he definitely climaxed after a couple of those punts for sure.
Oh yeah.
If you go back and listen to it, it definitely sounds like he finished, if you know what I mean.
This is a family show, Brice.
That's why we kept it PG-13 this time around. My apologies to Pastor Duke Backus if he is listening. I know that we keep it definitely very G-rated for our folk that hate the vulgarity. I hope it wasn't too vulgar. But we're going to take a little break. But in that break, you're going to listen to Coach LaFleur talking about what he needs to do. And I thought it was such a refreshing take again on what we've seen from McCarthy and what we saw from LaFleur. But enjoy this this quick soundbite from Coach LaFleur's post-game press conference.
What was your first evaluation? I haven't seen the film yet. Your first evaluation of the offensive side?
Yeah, just like I said, there's going to be a lot to learn from. And, it starts with myself. So, just can't tell you how proud I am of the effort that we gave, though, and to come out of here with a victory.
Feel about the tempo on offense. There were times where it looked pretty fast, and other times where it was slow.
Yeah, like I said, there's a lot to improve upon, and again, it starts right here with myself. So we'll take a look at the film and we'll get it corrected, and we'll be better.
And you said it starts with yourself in terms of getting it. What do you mean by that? Is it play selection, game planning?
Yeah, I think everything. I think you always got to be critical of yourself and evaluate how your process is, how your plan was. Did you give guys a chance to have success? And when you don't do as good as you want to do, you got to look inward.
Matt, you had some tough spots field position wise, but just talk about that drive in the fourth quarter. You backed up to 6, but you go down and you end up getting 3 points.
Yeah, that was a big drive. I mean, when you really look at the game, I felt like there was 2 drives, and ironically enough, they're the 2 scoring drives that were the big drives. We just, there was some sloppy play. I can probably put our players in a better position with some of the calls, and it took us a while to get our run game going, and really, I don't think I did a good enough job of staying committed to that run early.
And that was Coach LaFleur right after the game. And the thing that really sticks out is, he just won his first football game at Soldier Field against the Bears. I thought that, again, for me, it was just more of like a surprising, fascinating take on our new head coach and what we've been accustomed to in years past with Coach McCarthy, and just almost his just regurgitated post-game conferences, pre-game. Anytime he addressed the media, it just seemed very run-of-the-mill, and it was the same information. He always bristled at anything that was any sort of an inefficiency or an area of improvement. And I like that Coach LaFleur said that I need to look inward. And him and this wasn't in that soundbite, but him and Rodgers talked about it, where Rodgers said, I need to be better moving forward. And LaFleur responded by saying, I need to be better as well. And so it seems that they're on the same page. They're both very intelligent, cerebral type of people. And now it seems that Rodgers has found a guy that he can connect with, that can challenge him intellectually, and also a guy in Coach LaFleur that can reflect and improve. What was your take on that?
Definitely. No, I agree. I was talking to someone last night, and I said that LaFleur seems to be ushering in the era of accountability. Like you had mentioned before, you never heard it from McCarthy. You really didn't hear it from Rodgers. And to have them both after a victory saying, I could have, and that just speaks volumes about this team right now. I just think that's going to lead to a healthier locker room and better on-field play. And I like the direction that this team is heading right now.
I think so too. And also that, Rodgers, at least based on my memory and my recollection, Rodgers always seemed to be defensive.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that was a byproduct of McCarthy and Rodgers' relationship. But I thought that Rodgers, crediting the defense, we had that soundbite. Coach LaFleur, I mean, you could have easily, I don't foresee a lot of coaches doing this, but he could have easily been talking about how great it was. It had been a long journey to get here, 6 different jobs in 9 years, 39-year-old head coach, this whole offseason about Rodgers and LaFleur not getting along. He could have made it about him. And he did in a way, but that was, like you said, accountable, something that I have not been accustomed to. So this whole power structure, or in quotations, power structure with Mark Murphy, Brian Gutekunst, and Matt LaFleur, I think what you're seeing now is, my hope, Murphy trusting Gutekunst trusting LaFleur. And so, yes, this is a power structure. It's unusual. But again, if you've got cerebral, accountable people running this front office, I think we're in great hands. And so looking inward and improving, let's wrap up this post game, the Bears on tap, myself, Neebles. But what are things that excite you? Let's wrap up on a good note. I mean, obviously looking inward, and we can improve on a 10-3 victory, but what's something that excites you about the Packers moving forward?
I'm going to have to say this defense. We haven't seen anything like it for quite some time. And with how they played last night, it's just phenomenal what a change in personnel can do for you. Super stoked. One guy that I want to bring up in particular is Kevin King, the return of the King. For how much crap he gets, in the off season, he can't stay healthy, always hurt. What does he do for us? We should have had TJ Watt. TJ Watt, my bad. I'll edit that out later. But yeah, he had a good night last night. I mean, he ended up with 5 tackles. He had a sack, 3 run stops, a pass breakup, and a QB hit. So he definitely made his presence known last night, and that's what we need from him. Between him and Jair, if we can have them man in the corners, this is going to be a long year for opposing offenses.
I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I liked the swagger that King had. He definitely played with a lot more physicality and oomph. I mean, that's been his MO, his bread and butter, and which is part of the reason why he's had a checkered injury history. But that every time he made a tackle, I thought, oh, get up. And so I'm glad that you talked about Kevin King, because no one's talking about Kevin King right now, and what he's what his role is in this whole equation with the Packers defense. Another guy that excites me is Darnell Savage, a guy that just he's a playmaker, and a guy that was always around the football. He almost had 2 interceptions. The one thing I will mention is Kevin King has got to haul that in.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. We're supposed to leave on a positive note, but that's one thing. But Darnell Savage, a safety, again, I think the overall vocabulary word is refreshing for me.
Yes.
And I know that there's areas of improvement. The thing that excites me the most, not only the defense and what Gutekunst has done to fortify this cupboard, like you said, trim the fat, but I still don't think we're playing our best football on the defensive side of the ball and on the offensive side of the ball, clearly.
Nope.
And so for me, I'm excited to see what the Packers are going to do moving forward. How is this defense going to get better? I'd like to see them play some other offenses and see maybe we've put the Bears offense on the pedestal a little bit, but I'd like to see how they are against the Vikings. I'd like to see what kind of adjustments LaFleur makes moving into week 2. But that's another thing that I wanted to hit on was the adjustments that LaFleur made in the first quarter into the second quarter, the first 3 series into that touchdown drive. Little things like that I don't know if McCarthy would have done, or maybe he would have. But I like the fact that LaFleur said that, the first play of the game was a run. That was by design. And then play action was something that we predicted. But I like the little adjustments here and there to set up that big 47-yard catch to Marquez Valdes-Scantling. So I would say Darnell Savage is going to get better. And Adrian Amos and the Smiths are going to feel a little bit more comfortable in Pettine's defense. But I still think this was a preseason game, and we came away with a victory at Soldier Field against the Bears. So there's a lot of exciting things for me now that the Packers are 1-0.
Definitely.
Final thoughts from the soothing, sexy sounds of Neebles, our communications and productions director.
Well, one question I did have for you.
Oh, boy.
Oh, yeah. How short is that leash on Lane Taylor?
Yeah, I'm surprised we haven't mentioned him throughout this episode, so I'm glad that you wanted to touch on that. And there are definitely a couple people that tagged me on Twitter about what you think about Lane Taylor. I don't know if it was a product of or the defensive line of the Chicago Bears, but I need Lane Taylor. We need Lane Taylor to be an asset, not a liability. And I think last year, and then also in Thursday night's performance, I'd like to see what Elgton Jenkins can bring to the table. But I'd also like to think that it's almost like in baseball where you pick your closer. And if he blows a save early in the season, you're still saying, hey, I'm committed to this guy. I'm gonna have him work this out. I'm not gonna yank him. And so Lane Taylor being a 7-year veteran, obviously there's a lot of hype with Elgton Jenkins. We're excited, and rightfully so. He's a second-round draft pick, one of the highest draft picks in recent memory from the offensive line. And so I think that we're going to see a little bit more of Lane Taylor before they pull the plug on him and put in Elgton Jenkins. But if he struggles again, and granted, it's back-to-back weeks against good defenses with the Bears and the Vikings, but we played them again.
Oh, yeah.
Later on in the season. So if he's struggling with these two, and maybe it's still a preseason game for him, but he had a lot of snaps in the preseason. And usually if you're the starter, they tend to hold you back. So for me, I think that they allowed him to, not to say they allowed him to be the starter, but they gave it to him for week 1 and moving forward. But I would not be surprised by week 3, maybe week 4, we see Elgton Jenkins in there if Taylor continues to be a liability.
So pretty short leash.
I would think I would define it, a short leash would be that week 2 would be Elgton Jenkins. I think
Gotcha.
I think realistically, again, I go back to that week 5, week 6. I'd like to see what this team is like before going into the bye week.
Sure.
And if we're clicking on all cylinders, and I think you got to have your best players out there. I'd like to think that Jenkins is better than Taylor. And so Taylor's got to prove it. But again, I need to go back and look at him specifically, but I know that there were a couple times. And the thing that I liked about Billy Turner was that he got worked in the first quarter and then settled down. Whereas Taylor, it seemed that it was one of those things where he never seemed to find a groove.
Yeah.
And maybe that's because it's the Bears defense.
Right.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, having to go up against the Bears in your first game, that's not really a fair judge of performance. They're just monsters. I mean, they probably have, if not the best, one of the best front sevens in all of football. Unfortunately, next week, it doesn't really get any easier going up against Minnesota. However, it is nice to know that we do have a competent backup in Jenkins, just in case, something does happen with Taylor. But, for the time being, I do see him sticking at the position at least for a couple more weeks. Like you mentioned, maybe 5-6 weeks in, if he's still not performing well, then I could see a switch being made.
And I got to think that they knew that maybe their weakest link was Lane Taylor, and that's why they went and selected Elgton Jenkins. And Elgton Jenkins could be part of the plan at center moving forward, depending on if they decide to save some cap room for Lindsley. If you haven't, check out Left Guard on Left Guard Short Pour, where I talk about contractual sort of influences with that position and what that entails for Elgton Jenkins. Again, I'd like to say this. Maybe it's always been kind of a shorter leash with Taylor. I was surprised that they named him week 1 starter going into the final preseason game. So for me, maybe I was surprised. But again, I'd rather see a veteran than a rookie, to be quite honest, and give him some familiarity with this complex system.
Right.
But I'd like to think that come playoff time, yeah, I said it, come playoff time, I think Jenkins will be in there to fortify one of the biggest strengths of this Green Bay Packers team. Thank you so much for following Postgame the Bears. Again, we're going to say it. Any last comments? How you feeling heading into week 2?
I am feeling good.
Week 2, baby. Week 2. Packers are 1-0 right now. I know statistically It wasn't the prettiest game, but they won the turnover battle. They won the time of possession battle, and they had key plays from that defense, something that we have not seen in a long time. Just wait till that offense starts clicking, and then watch out. Thank you so much for listening to Post Game. The Bears on tap. Packers are 1-0, so celebrate the victorious Green Bay Packers and enjoy this little celebratory victory dance from Coach LaFleur and your Green Bay Packers. Once again, I am your co-host today, Brice Christensen.
I'm Neebles.
And this is the Unknown Packers Podcast.
First of all, congratulations, Coach. All right, defense. Hey, huge pick in the end zone. Hey, special teams got after that. Hey, listen, here's what I'm so proud of you about, all right? There was some adversity, and you know what? You guys didn't blink, all right? We stayed the course, and it was a hell of a team win, all right? But understand, that's one game. We got another North opponent next week. Pretty damn good football team, all right? So let's get our mind right.
Hey, hold on. Defense should probably be giving them this, but not every day you get your first win. Way to go.
I tell you though, I really do, man. I appreciate every guy in this locker room. Hey, bring it in. Great job. Hey, family on three. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you so much for following the Unknown Packers podcast. Make sure that you're tuning in to TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Anchor, Google Play, Stitcher, and a variety of other podcast platforms. Don't forget to say, hey, Alexa, play the Unknown Packers podcast. That's right. We're good friends with Alexa. Make sure you're checking out our website, theunknownpackers.com, as well as Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and Reddit, the Unknown Packers podcast. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. I'm Brice Christensen, and this is the Unknown Packers podcast.